Right now, clinicians and practice owners have this mindset where dentistry is exempt from a lot of the smartness and the automation and visualization that we are using anyway everywhere else. And so it's just this reminder to say, hey, you can now do that with Planet DDS, with Denticon, with these cloud-based software, with AI, with the teledentistry. You can do that too in your dental practice. And it's going to come down the line fast too, the stuff that we can't do yet. Like it's right here, it's happening. So it's just a matter of time. And we just often think, because we're traditional in dentistry, we just often think that, that technology doesn't apply to us. Our patients are fine. We don't need it. Our business is fine. And then we miss out on the growth that our practice can actually have.
Welcome back to another episode of the Dental Economist Show. I'm your host, Mike Huffaker. On this episode, I'm joined by the tooth girl herself, Melissa K. Turner. She's a major influencer in dentistry with thousands of followers online. She's known as an absolute expert for brand strategy and product growth, while also being a fully qualified dental hygienist. You may have just seen her speaking at the AADGP show in Vegas, or you might be looking forward to seeing her at the Denobi Awards Gala next month. Melissa, welcome.
Hey, Mike. Thank you for having me. And thanks to everyone who is listening today.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining the podcast. So your career is extensive. I went to your website, I read through everything, and I got tired. You do a lot of things. And it might almost be easier to talk about where you haven't been. But, let's just take a step back. When did you first get the buzz for dentistry? And, what fuels your passion?
I think that's a good word. Nobody ever put it that way. Buzz. The buzz for dentistry, right? It's not like everyone is born and just falls in love with teeth and everything about teeth and wants to become a dentist. They just kind of fall into it. Or they have a relative, a parent or a grandparent that was in dentistry, right? Like those are the two just like separate paths that you take. Well, I come from a really conservative farm town. And at that point when I was, going to college, nobody went to college. And so I was like, I don't want to go to college either. Right. So I was just like, what? It was back when newspapers were popular. Now, see, I'm dating myself, Mike. This is it.
That's right.
No social media. It was like, you go to the newspaper, you find a job, and that's all you do. It was simple, right? Simple life. So I remember being like 18, 19 and being like, what can I do with my life? And so I was looking in the classifieds in a print newspaper. And my one strategy that I had was, what's the one job that's like everywhere in the classifieds? And the one job was nursing, which I definitely did not want to do. And then the second most popular job was dental assisting. And I had gone to the dentist growing up. I had a lot of ortho experience. I had braces really young and things like that. So I thought, you know what? I'm familiar with that. I think I would like it. Don't really like the smell of a dental office, but maybe I'll learn to like it. And I learned to like it. So started out assisting. And then as soon as I really did fall in love with the buzz of dentistry, then I went to hygiene school. And it's been a whirlwind of a ride ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. You mentioned that, a lot of people don't just wake up one day and decide dental is the path for me. And similar for myself, I was working in software companies before I came to Planet DDS, and I served the restaurant hospitality and was selling point of sale software. And when I was first approached by a role to run the sales organization within Planet DDS and learned about that it was in dental, it wasn't necessarily like a selling point at that point for me. But as we've heard many people talk about where they get into dental and they fall in love with it, why do you think people fall in love with this industry? Like, what is it about dentistry that causes people to find it through a surprise or through a circuitous route, but then not want to leave once they get here?
I often call it a beloved industry for that reason. And I think because it's almost like a closed off society in a way. And once you belong, right? And so you have that safety factor to it. And it's not a huge industry. I think size does matter in this case. And I think like if this was a $7 million or 7 million person industry, in the US, it would be different. But instead, it might be 2 million people large. Maybe we've got 200,000 hygienists, 200,000 dentists, that's the licensed folks. And then you have, you have the educators, you have the innovators, you have the startup founders, and then you have the sale, so it's not a huge industry. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Because once you belong to the family, you belong. And some people feel like they never belong. And that's one of the things I'm working on kind of on the side is let's become more inclusive. But that we can go down that route when we want to. But it's one of these things where once you get into the industry and you really start to put down roots, a lot of it has to do with in-person networking. Now we have social networking, so that helps some too. But once you realize the large scale of the industry and the high level view, it's really an industry where we want to help people. Everyone in it just wants to help someone. You at Planet DDS and Denticon, you guys just want to help the clinicians, let's get you there. The practice owners, let's get you there faster, farther. Let's let you run more efficient. The clinicians want to help their patients. Like we want to do what's best for our patients, right? So it's this kind of mindset where everyone in dentistry wants to help and make a big impact. And you get that a lot with healthcare, also some other industries.
I think that's really well said. I think for me as well, it was maybe surprising that the societal impact that dentistry has played such a big part in the satisfaction that you get from having a position within the dental industry. And you're right, there's a lot of great people. And I think in general, the mindset that most folks have in this space is that they are looking to help and they are looking to help others. And so you get to surround yourself with a lot of amazingness from that perspective, which is always positive. So question for you, you were talking about, when you first became hygienist and maybe you were dating yourself a little bit. And so that's back in what? Let's just say like a little while ago. But before maybe the term influencer existed, what do you remember the industry being like then? And from your perspective, how has it progressed for the better?
Yeah. Well, so when I was just on stage, I was emceeing for the American Academy of Dental Group Practices, and it was their 50th anniversary. And so, I was on stage and I was like, what am I going to say? And so I threw it back to what dentistry was like 50 years ago. And it was things like, amalgam was the standard of care, right? It was things like we didn't wear gloves yet. Like we had no idea what the internet was. But when I first came into dentistry, I will say it was 20 years ago. So there we can date myself there. But when I first came, it was one of these things where the coolest dental practices and the most innovative ones were just getting websites. And it was a wonderful thing. They were all the cookie cutter. They all had banners that said new patient welcome. And, it was at the point too where every dental practice outside their front door had a banner that said new patients welcome, so they just put that now on their website. And it was one of these things where dentists were still, they thought the practices were all about themselves, which is one of the things I often talk about. You walk in the door and the dentist name was part of the practice name, and you walk in the door and you see all the credentials, and all the patients wanted to meet the dentist, and that's one of the changes I've been seeing lately, especially in the last 5 years, but it will continue to be this way as the generations change in the dental practices. A lot of the generational changes that I'm seeing are things like the patients don't care if they ever see the dentist or not. They don't really want to come into a dental practice that's named after the dentist. They want more of a Starbucks experience. And I kind of cringe as I say that, but they want to be able to go to a dentist and have the same experience, whether they're in one town or another. They want good service. They want good feeling. They want to trust. And so when I first came into dentistry, it was not like that. And it changed, and that's fine. Things continue to change, and they will do so in the future. I think right now, dental practice owners, whether you are part of a DSO or a group practice or a private practice, we all could be reminded that dentistry is going to continue to change, and the business aspect of what we're doing needs to change along with that as well.
Yeah, so you're speaking a lot there about consumer expectations. And do you feel right now that, maybe there's been a little bit of a shift in dental where it's become a much more frequently spoken about topic, but do you think that dental practices in general are meeting now where the consumer wants them to be? Like, have we made that shift? Is there still a big gap there? And, what needs to be done to kind of change that?
It is changing. When I first came on the scene, You did not want to talk about consumer. It was your patient, patient. We want to be real and authentic with our patient, and that's fine. But our patients changed, and now they want to be treated like consumers. And this is one of the things I often say on podcasts or from the stage is my generation, millennials, we were the first generation that grew up with Sesame Street as the babysitter. The TV was I had a great life. I had like 12 acres I could roam around, yet I was still sitting in front of the TV all day long on the weekends as a kid. And every 5 minutes we'd have commercials come through. And so I think that's why marketing degrees and things like that have been so popular with millennials, because marketing is our love language. And so we want to be treated as consumers. And I'll walk into a business, and if they don't start selling to me, I'm like, wait, this is weird. Like, I need to be sold.
They don't want my business. They don't want me here.
I know, right? Yeah, I guess they don't want my business, or they don't know what they're doing.
Sure.
And so translating that into the dental practice, it's a huge mindset change where it's okay to sell to a millennial because they understand that. Maybe not the older generations yet. The younger generations will be a little bit different, but right now the millennials are becoming the majority of the patient base right now. And so just even kind of changing our mindset as clinicians or practice owners into understanding that it's okay to market and sell to our patients right now because they want that. That's a big learning curve. And so we are on that change trajectory as an industry as a whole, but we're not moving very fast, and that's to be expected. And we have a long way to go too with it.
Yeah. On your website, you have a headline title, and it says Story Strategy Design. And I was listening to a podcast recently. It was the Huberman podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not. It's all into, health and performance and other things along those lines. And it was a whole episode on oral health. And I got completely lost probably in the first 30 minutes because he was using a bunch of words that I couldn't track. But I got the gist of it, what he was looking to communicate to the audience. And it was, reiterating the importance of oral health for your overall health. And I know that, it's discussed frequently about such a huge percentage of the population doesn't even go see the dentist. And one of the things I don't feel that we do very well in this industry is to tell the story about what that connection is and why it is important to go to the dentist. And it's not just about getting your teeth cleaned and going once every 6 months, but that there's a lot of these other connections. Is that something when you think of a story or a brand within an individual practice or even a group that should be considered in the marketing and the presentation of that business into the market, and how do you think about that?
Mm-hmm. I love that you brought that up. From the dental side of things, we have been talking about medical dental integration, oral systemic health for a very, very, very long time, but we're the only ones talking about it. Our medical colleagues, they don't necessarily care. They don't want to cross that mouth barrier. It kind of grosses them out. So we've been talking about it for a long time, and there have been initiatives in the last 20 years that I know of that have kind of made strides in this arena. And it's actually kind of having a resurgence. Some of the clients that I work with, well-known clients, I can't name them yet, but they're going to be having new campaigns and things coming out about oral systemic health, about medical dental integration, and it'll be consumer focused, direct to the patient. So we will see a resurgence of that. But I think right now the biggest message we can give to our patients, it might be that message, but it's also like we want to grab them with the easy thing. Like, okay, you want a better smile. You want whiter teeth. You want straight teeth, right? Right now, for the last 10 years or so, that's been the focus. So let's grab them with that. And then there's an age group that's really interested. Like, I'm really interested in preventing my kids from getting what I have or what my mom has, all this systemic things that get passed down. High cholesterol. I have really high cholesterol and there's no reason for it, right? So does my mom. I don't want my kids to have that. And there's a generation of people who that messaging will work for. I don't think we're quite there yet, but it'll be like, okay, you can own what's happening in your mouth. And so when there's a patient in my chair, that's the only goal, my only goal with them, whether I get all the crud off their teeth or not, that doesn't matter. What matters is me helping them understand they can own what's happening in their mouth and prevent it. And that what's happening in their mouth is a reflection of what's happening in the rest of their body. So I think, sure, from a marketing perspective, from a branding perspective, from a dental office perspective, sure, that messaging might work, but it also might get overlooked because that's not priority when our patients are looking at social feeds and they're seeing the Super Bowl or the latest with Britney Spears. Like, they're not going to look at that. So when we have them in their chair, that's when we can really grab their attention and use that human one-on-one connection and see and say, you know what? You got to own your mouth now. Like, it's time. Let's figure out how you can do that.
That's really interesting. I appreciate that approach. It makes a lot of sense. If you're not able to resonate or make a connection with somebody and get them to come in the first place, then a lot of the other story doesn't much matter. And so, really kind of defining what that is that's going to build that connection seems to be an important piece. And then, to your point, once you're in the chair, that's when the education can continue and you can really kind of take it to that next level. I find the entire approach for how we drive more patients to dental practices fascinating, and the different strategies and approaches. And you've clearly, put a lot of thought into this. What are some of the other things that you see that are maybe changes that are occurring in the space right now as it relates to branding or marketing in general?
I think the biggest mistake I'm seeing right now goes back to what you said. How are we getting our patients through the doors? Our patients do not want to come through the doors. I don't even want to go to the dentist. And I love the dental office, I love it. But I don't want to go because it just takes time out of my 9 to 5 workday, right? I don't have time to take my kids. I don't have time to go myself. I'll clean my teeth at home, but don't tell anyone. It's one of these things. No one wants to go to the dental office. And I'm using absolutes on purpose here because so many times in dentistry, because we work in this beloved industry, we forget that no one wants to go to the dental office. No one wants to see the dentist. One of the fun things that I say, because I'm not a dentist, when somebody's in my chair and they're saying, I hate the dentist, they literally say that. I'm like, okay, well, good. I'm not the dentist. So that's great. Let's move forward. But the reality is no one wants to be there. And so one of the things that I've been working on for years now is helping practice owners understand that there are ways that we can reach the patients and provide services to them without sitting back and crossing your fingers and hoping they come through our practice doors. That is so old school, right? And it's stressful. I know so many dentists. I've seen the sweat coming down their heads because they're waiting on their 3-hour patient who's going to produce a lot for them that day to walk in the door, walk in on time so we can get all the procedures we need to get done, right? Like, it's so stressful. And so part of what I do when I work with dental practices on branding is I help them realize, and again, it's a mindset change, Mike, but help them realize that there are things we can do to take our services to the patient. And it's as old school as mobile dentistry and portable dentistry. There was a time where that was just relegated to public health communities. Like, okay, we'll have a pop-up VA clinic for the veterans in the community. No, now millennials, everyone wants dentistry and healthcare and anything to go to their house, their workplace, their community center. So we can do that in dentistry. We can do that. We can do that through teledentistry. I don't often like to say that word anymore because certain things have made teledentistry seem bad, certain things that have gone bankrupt. And so now I call it virtual care and dentistry, right? There are so many virtual things we can provide to our patients and get reimbursed for, or use it as marketing, or use it to reactivate inactive patients. Virtual care is one of the most underutilized things in dentistry right now. And that's the easiest thing that a dental practice can do to reach new patients, existing patients, inactive patients.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about that? What are the best applications for virtual care or teledentistry? Though I do like virtual care. I had not heard it worded that way, and I'm gonna use that now moving forward. What are the applications for that? When it first became a very popular buzzword during COVID, it was discussed there was webinars ad nauseum, and everybody's like, hey, let's have a webinar about how we can, provide this service to our patients. And, as COVID subsided, it felt like that you don't hear as much about it anymore. And it was kind of maybe a general belief that now patients are just going to go back to the practice. And on the mobile care side, makes a ton of sense. If you can deliver care to where the patients are, whether it's their office or something else, like a huge amount of benefit there. For myself, I'm still trying to understand what the applications would be on the virtual care side, and how that could be integrated into a practice to add a lot of value.
It's almost one of these things that's a paradox of choice, because there are so many ways you can use it. So when I work with dental practices, I do a lot of consulting on virtual care for practices. How can they add a virtual arm to the practice? And it's going to come down on what their immediate needs are and how they function from a clinical and business model too. But one of the biggest things that I mentioned already, especially post-COVID, Mike, is you can use virtual appointments to catch all the patients that have gone inactive in your practice. And you can, depending on the state, depending on the third party payer, depending on a lot of things, you can get reimbursed for those appointments, or you can simply have a fee for, pay out of pocket. Patients are used to paying out of pocket for virtual things, a service charge, right? They're used to that. Or you could just do it for free and put it under the marketing, budget label. And once you hook them with a virtual appointment, then you get them back into the flow of the schedule and the patient workday. So virtual appointments is going to be huge for inactive patients. Right now, it's also going to be huge as the baby boomers leave the practice, and they're starting to. My parents, it's not going to be long until they can't drive anymore, especially at night or in the rain, to the practice. It's not going to be long until they start to really fade out of the practice. And if you can get the boomers understanding how to use virtual care now, then they will not leave your practice when they can't come in anymore, right? And then that's the kind of the gateway to, okay, well, I'll just go do their cleaning at their house, treat 2 or 3 of them at the same time, their neighbors down the street. Or you can do comprehensive care in a van, but if you want to go that route. So boomers, inactive patients. The other way we're really seeing it take off is for triage. So whether it's triage with kids specifically, I remember having young kids, and I'd freak out over a fever that just happened an hour ago, right? Or things like that. So you can have those situations, do that virtually, and then the parent and the kid doesn't have to come in, and you can be like, you're fine, trust me, Or new patients too. This is a good way for, if you want to kind of screen out and pre-meet the new patients, it's a good way for you to be able to choose who you want coming through the practice. And then one of the biggest ways we're seeing teledentistry being used is for new leads, for brand new patients to the practice. There's specific public-facing teledental apps and software and websites that will funnel patients to your practice if you need new patient leads. And then there's the old school way of, I had a friend over COVID who was a dentist, and his hygiene department was backed up, completely backed up, like, all of ours were. And so he said, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to drop what I'm doing every hour and go do 3 hygiene checks. I'm going to save all those hygiene checks to the end of the day. And he did them virtually. So you can do that asynchronous. That's kind of that term. And you can still charge out for them. It's amazing. And he got caught up pretty fast. So that's another kind of obscure way. Like, a dentist doesn't need to get up during their MODs or their crown preps to go do a hygiene check when they can just do it via virtual. It's like efficiency, right? That's the bottom line. It's like, let's get a more efficient schedule, and virtual care will do that, because we know that we only have a certain amount of clinical chair hours to make a profit. And so why not reserve those clinical chair in the brick and mortar hours for the things that actually do make a profit, and make everything else go to the virtual appointment.
Thank you for that answer. That's a lot of really great applications. Yeah. No, but a lot of things that I had not put a lot of thought into before or considered. And one thing that you did say there that I took note of, well, many of them, but one of the things when you're talking about the boomers, you did make a comment, if you can help that generation understand how to use the virtual care technology. Is there a barrier of entry from a technology perspective? My mother-in-law still uses a flip phone, but my father-in-law does have a smartphone. And from a technology perspective, do you see a challenge there where the adoption of a virtual environment for doing a teledentistry appointment becomes a challenge with that audience?
Depends on where you live and who your patients are, you know. But my husband's grandma was 90 years old and she was savvy as anything with technology, right? And I do miss flip phones. I could really use a good flip phone right now. But yeah, so it just depends on your patients, and you'll know your patients best. But also don't put them in a box and think that they can't do it, because COVID really advanced a lot of the boomers, and even older than that, they advanced the technological savvy in those patients. And even too, it's much easier for, let's say, a boomer who can't leave the house to have their millennial daughter come in and say, hey, mom and dad, we're going to have the virtual appointment for you now. Versus what happens now is we have to hire somebody to transport my dad, who's in bed, who can't get out, into a wheelchair, into a van, into the dental practice, and then back. And that's hundreds of dollars, if not thousands of dollars, for that patient, for their family. It's a big burden on their family, while it could be made very easy. And one of the things I always say to dentists and clinicians and practice owners is, just think about how much you're using automation, virtual care, digitalization in your personal life. And they'll say, okay, yeah, I'm doing this and I'm making my whole house a smart house, right? And then I say, well, why aren't you doing that in your dental practice? And they say, well, I don't know. I didn't think it was possible. Like, it's right now, clinicians and practice owners have this mindset where dentistry is exempt from a lot of the smartness and the automation and visualization that we are using anyway everywhere else. And so it's just this reminder to say, hey, you can now do that with Planet DDS, with Denticon, with these cloud-based software, with the AI, with the teledentistry. You can do that too in your dental practice. And it's going to come down the line fast too, the stuff that we can't do yet. Like, it's right here. It's happening. So it's just a matter of time. And we just often think, because we're traditional in dentistry, we just often think that, oh, that technology doesn't apply to us. Our patients are fine. We don't need it. Our business is fine. And then we miss out on the growth that our practice can actually have.
Yeah, well said. At the beginning of the recording, I had mentioned that, you were involved in many different things. I'm curious, we talk about technologies that are available for your clients, technologies that are available within the dental industry. For yourself, as you juggle many different things that you work on, what type of personal systems do you put in place? How do you stay organized? Is there anything that you can kind of share about your approach to, staying on top of the things that you're passionate about and pursuing your business and building and growing?
That's been a journey. And, when my kids were super young, I was a mom who worked. When they were still in diapers, I was working at the kitchen table full time, and I was going insane. And so it's been a process since then. Now they can get their own snack. They can empty the litter pan, Mike. It's an amazing thing. So the systems and processes that I put in place are not perfect, but it gets me through. It's a matter of time blocking. And I know there's been several conversations on social media and stuff in dentistry about this, but that's what it is. I'll dedicate a half a day to this project or this business, and then another half to this. I only take meetings really on Mondays and Wednesdays. Fridays are my day where I don't schedule anything. It's just a catch up day, things like this. What I haven't figured out yet, and this is something that's coming down the line, I do a lot of traveling every month. Once or twice a month, I'm gone, right, at dental events. And what I haven't yet figured out is to, let's say I'm traveling on a weekend. Do I block off, that time that I spent working on the weekend? Do I block it off in the next week so that I have that rest that I need? It's impossible. Like, that is the one that I have not figured out yet in my career.
It's a tough question to answer. You feel like you kind of lose that time that you would have blocked out otherwise. So you just end up coming back from a show or a conference or an event. And for myself, I just kind of end up, it feels like working twice as hard. And so I guess going to the show piece though, I'm curious, when you're traveling, you're going to these conferences, what are your goals? Like, what are you looking to get out of, that time away from home, which is so precious? You're out there, you're traveling. Do you put some thought into, here are the things, like we're heading into Chicago midwinter right now. What are some of the things that you're looking to accomplish while you're at a show? And how do you know if it has been successful for you and if it's worth that time spent away?
It depends on the show, and it depends what I need, what my short-term and long-term goals are for that time in my life. But I can tell you this, I'll go and I'll have client meetings. Someday it'll be like back to back to back. Some conferences I'll go and I'll have nothing. Some I'm speaking, different things like that. But I'll tell you this, the minute that I go to a show and I have an agenda is the minute that my ROI, just going as Melissa Turner, is shat, right? Like when I go with an agenda, that's when I come home and I'm like, darn it, like I didn't get this and this and this. But when I go with no expectations, it far exceeds it. And that's not necessarily how to run a business, but that's what happens. I'll go and I'll have meetings, right? But then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go with the flow. And, if I triple book myself tonight, that's fine. We're also going to, add in more events, especially this Thursday night at Chicago Midwinter. There's a lot happening. But it's that kind of thing. The minute that I go with an agenda, or if I'm walking down the trade show floor with an agenda, then it doesn't work. If I'm just myself and I shoot the bull, that's when the magic happens.
Yeah. So it's being open to being flexible, not being, too hard on yourself with like sticking to a defined agenda. And kind of when the magic happens is when you're just being present and open to whatever kind of comes your way.
And that's something I know too. A lot of the vendors have been having trouble with measuring their ROI at these events, whether they're exhibiting, whether they're just there walking around. And that's not something new. That's been happening for years. I mean, for the events that I put on, we could have the exact same event, exact same attendees year after year, exact same show, and the vendor will have an amazing year one year and not an amazing year the next year. And so specifically, if there's any, vendors or exhibitors on the call or on listening to the podcast right now, like it helps to redefine what you're expecting, what you're defining as ROI at the show. Do you really want to get 100 email addresses from the people that are walking around the floor just looking for swag? Like, is that really what you want? Or is it there to form the strategic partnerships? Is it there to really pay attention to what your competitors are doing so that you can one up them in a year's time, right? Are you there to just for pure brand awareness? Like these are things that have to change in the vendor mindset in regards to these, because now everyone and their mother are putting on dental events, right? There's so many now. And I love them all.
There are. We went from, COVID where everything was shut down to now there are many. I do like that there is, you do get more choice now. If you want to go and participate in something that's a little bit more intimate with a smaller group and take that approach where that's the value that you find is some more authentic connection with a smaller audience, there can be a lot of value there. Or you can go to a Chicago Midwinter and to your point, scan 200 people that are coming to steal your sunglasses that are sitting on your table that have no interest in anything that you're doing, and make it more of a pitch for brand awareness or something along those lines. But it is interesting. There's a lot of choice out there. I think choice is generally a good thing. You do have an event coming up, the Denobi Awards. Tell me a little bit about what the Denobi Awards are, kind of why they started, and what the gala is all about.
Yeah. So Denobi Awards always takes place in the first week of March every year. And one of my very good friends and the other co-founder with the awards, her name is Sonia Dunbar. She and I launched this this will be our fourth awards program. And we had been talking about it for a couple of years before we launched it. And we were like, you know what, like, we're just going to take our time with launching this, make sure we do everything perfect, startup world, you want to make sure it's perfect. And then COVID hit and we were like, oh my gosh, dentistry is just depressed, like we need something as a pick-me-up. And so our first Adobe Award Gala was in 2021, right? As soon as, everything opened, I think we were like the second event to come back. But the premise is this, and I want to be clear about what it is. At that point, we had done a review of all of the award programs in dentistry, and most of them were lifetime achievement awards, and most of them were for dentists only or clinicians. And even though I'm a clinician, most of my days are spent with the product, service, and tech companies. And I was like, hang on a minute. Like, it's not just clinicians that need this. It's not just dentists. It's not just if you're old and gray and you win an award, okay, that's great. But nobody wants to win an award when they're old and gray. Like, you want to be honored. If you want to be honored, you want to be honored in the moment. And so our goal is to help, we call it the unsung heroes in the industry, who aren't getting the recognition that they deserve. And so every October through December, we open it up for nominations. Anyone in the world, as long as you have a role in dentistry, you can be nominated. And we typically get 200 or so nominations. And all you have to do is have a role in dentistry. And then our selection committee narrows it down to about 70 or so individuals. And then at our gala, 10 individuals win. And then we also opened it up to clinical teams, because there are a ton of clinical teams who are fantastic at working together, who are making huge strides in dentistry, caring for patients. And as an entity, they also deserve to be honored. So it's not a popularity contest. It's not, a lot of them now are, vote for me on social media. This is not it. This is this is a refined thing. And you got to break out the red carpet. Like it's like Oscars, right? But one of my favorite things is, the nominees, the shortlisters will learn that they've been nominated or awarded. And they'll come to me and they'll say, Melissa, I'm not the type of person to get up on a stage and receive an award. I don't really want to come. And I'm like, I know, that's why you were nominated. Do it for your team. Don't do it for you, right? Do it for marketing for your company. Don't do it for you. Like, if you're that kind of person that can't get around it. So it's just a beautiful night.
And where does that take place?
So it moves around every year. We're in Dallas this year. And it's one of these things where not everyone wants to attend an award gala, and that's fine. Not everyone wants to get dressed up, and that's fine. Not everyone wants to go on stage and receive an award. That's fine. But it's to help elevate those who haven't. So some of the names that will win this year, everyone will know, and some no one will know. So it's one of these. It's a heartfelt moment for me.
That's great. Where does the name Denobi come from?
Denobi is an Irish surname. So we don't have like an amazing backstory to it. We wanted to name it Dentistry's Oscars, but there were a lot of legal issues with that. We wanted something that was strong, that seemed dental, that was a little bit masculine. And so this is what we came up with. And it's funny, like with any startup, when you put a brand out there, everyone's like, what is that? What is it? And then it just grows. And by now, people are recognizing, oh, okay, like, oh, I want to come, like they know it now. And it's a good feeling. So next year, year 5 will be a huge celebratory event, because it'll be 5 years is a big deal in the event world. If you can make it there, that's a big deal.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on that. And we'll look forward to seeing all the pictures of the event on social media and hearing who the winners are. And I think that'll be really exciting. You mentioned earlier, and to kind of wrap up, I wanted to touch on this again, that, dentistry is a great place for people and that it needs to be inclusive. And so talk to me a little bit about Smile Proud. What are you doing there? And, when you think about inclusivity and opportunities that we have in this space, why is that important to you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it all goes back to being a woman. I was raised in an area where women were not equal with men. We don't have to get real personal here, but I'll get a little personal. But I remember growing up, and all I wanted to do was be a pastor on a stage. And I was told, no, you're a woman. You can't do that. And I was like, oh, okay, blah, 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 keep going with my day. And then at some point in my childhood, it hit me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, why? The big why. Oh, it's because I'm a woman. And so since then, I've had 2 daughters now. Now I see the inequality, not just in dentistry, not just in the boardroom, not just on boards, corporate boards, but I see the inequality women and men, but I also see the inequality with anyone who is not a privileged white male, right? So LGBTQ plus, anyone who is a minority, anyone who feels like they don't have a voice. And I don't know if it's because I'm a millennial or if it's just who I am, but I'm like, you know what? If I can speak up for women, then that means by nature, I'll be speaking up maybe for all of these other groups that don't have a voice. And so in dentistry, my trademark is my blonde hair. I laugh a lot. I smile a lot. I'm flashy with my clothes. I'm feminine. And it's a brand. It's on purpose because I don't mind breaking through barriers. I don't mind being the only woman in a boardroom. That is tough. That is tough. But if I can help kind of break even just the feminine masculine barrier in this industry, then it can move mountains. And so it gets very dicey sometimes, but that's the bottom line of, and kind of who I am, my personality is if everybody is here doing things, I'm over here. I'm like, okay, why are they over there? I'm going to do my own thing in business, in personal life, in fun. And so for me, it's almost a requirement and almost a burden in a way where I'm like, I don't mind being different. So why don't I help kind of like make positive change, not just for women, but for minorities, for LGBTQ plus, for anyone who feels like they don't have a voice. Because I know what it's like not to have a voice. And it's important to have people fight for you in that way.
Yeah, maybe if you don't mind, just going in a little bit more detail about, how you help and what you're doing and maybe how other people could get involved if they're interested and, talk a little bit about that initiative.
Most of what I do is subtle in these ways. So things like the Denobi Awards, we were just talking about that. Like, how can we elevate those who don't have a voice? And so our selection committee works really hard to help elevate those who are not the norm. Things like, hygienists who own dental practice, a lot of times in dentistry, they might be blacklisted a little bit. And so to help dentists see that that's not necessarily a bad thing, to help raise them up, things like that. And it's all subtle. I could take the Martin Luther King route and preach from the rooftops, and that's fine. But that's one way to make change. And in what I do, I'm going to lead by example. And so if I can play the game, the societal game, but also know I'm playing the game and make change through that, that's my goal. So that wasn't very specific for you, but there you have it. That's my answer.
Last question for you. Okay. What are you most excited about as you kind of head into 2024? Something that you're looking forward to, or something that you're working on that you're really passionate about? Just anything at all that you'd like to share.
Like the one thing that sums up everything I'm doing, no matter what business I'm in or client I'm working with, it is brand strategy. Mm-hmm. And I think for 2024, for dental practices, for product, service, and tech companies, and for individuals in dentistry who want to go to the next level, or clinicians who just want to get a better clinical job, it all comes down to how you're branding yourself. And now more than ever, like it's so important. And I'm not talking like you have to look like me, right? It's how you present on social media as a practice or as an individual or as a company, how you present in person at the trade show. Are you the same? Are you branding the same? Or do you have different voices, amongst both of those? So I think for me, I'm getting excited because branding, even though maybe dental practices don't realize it yet, maybe dental professionals don't realizing it yet, but it's becoming more at the forefront for all of us right now, just in general in the world. And one of the fun things is, a lot of these younger dentists that are coming out, they think that they have to be an influencer and that's going to get them patients in their practice. And so, when I work with the younger dentists, I'm like, no, you don't have to be an influencer. I might be one, like a small one in dentistry, but you don't have to be one. Like, you be a business owner, you learn how to run your business, let the influencers do the influencing. It's one of these things, these younger generations just think everybody wants to be an influencer and that they're gonna hit their gold mine doing that, right? Not in dentistry, no.
So you're saying they don't need to start posting dances of TikToks of themselves immediately upon graduating dental school?
If they have a passion, then heck yes.
Yes.
But no, they don't have to.
Okay. All right. If they have the passion. I got it.
No. And that's the funny thing, Mike, is like, on social media in dentistry, I'm not a consumer influencer. I'm an influencer for dental professionals in the dental, those of us in dentistry. And my audience over all my platforms is probably 100,000. And it's this balance of like, how do people take me seriously as an influencer? And then like see me the next day in the boardroom, right? Like it's this like dichotomy that is like, okay, like I have to walk it fast. But everyone right now is calling themselves an influencer. They want to be an influencer. And it's the funniest thing, because then when they go try and dance on TikTok, I mean, it is pure entertainment. Then they might get 2 views, but it's pure entertainment.
That's very true. That is pure entertainment. It is, you mentioned that dichotomy, and I know we'll wrap up here in just a second, but it is interesting that there is, for whatever reason, and maybe with an older generation, the perception of if somebody is an influencer in that way, that maybe they're not as serious on the boardroom side, but like that's not true at all. And I think that perception is dramatically changing now, with so many successful individuals that have started, from the path of an influencer, the Kardashians or Mr. Beast or whoever, and all incredibly savvy business folks that know their trade and know what they're doing, but yet also, influence through these different channels. So it is, I think, a absolute pivot in society where it's no longer the old way where it was like you have to feel some type of embarrassment for going out and having this social channel as well. I don't know if that's making much sense, but that's something that I think about.
And even in dentistry too, I know we have to wrap, but there's been a lot of talk about, okay, is an influencer the same thing as an old school key opinion leader, thought leader? Companies will come to me and say, hey, Melissa, can you do some influencer things for me? And I'll say, let's back up. Like, what do you want? Do you want me to speak for you on a stage? Do you want me to educate about your product? Or do you want me to make kissy face photos on Instagram for you? Like, what do you want? Because they're all separate marketing, separate tactics, separate strategies. And so I'll like back up and say, okay, let's pick and pull like what you want out of this. And then we'll go from there, because it is completely separate things. Not everyone who can take this in-person stage can take the virtual stage, and vice versa. So it's just, it's a mess right now, but we're making through.
Yeah, no, but that's a really great point. And I think that's a great spot for us to end the conversation. And Melissa, it was great. It was great to meet you. And I really appreciate you coming on the podcast. And thank you for the time. I really appreciate it.
I had a blast. And thanks to everyone who's listening.
The Dental Economist Show is brought to you by Planet DDS. To find out more about how cloud-based dental software by Planet DDS helps unleash dentists and their staff to focus on patient care, visit www.planetdds.com. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes by following wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.